It's time to get nerdy, y'all.
A little bit of gaming history for you.
Something relevant in gaming and discuss our opinions on it.
Should we kick it out of here, or should we kick-start it?
This is the part where you, the listeners, try to stump the hosts.
I'm not a lawyer. I just play one on a podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's Tuesday, April 11th, 2025, and y'all know what that means. It's time to get nerdy, y'all. Welcome to episode number 352 of Two Nerds in a Pod, the nerdiest video game podcast in the galaxy. I am Lam, also known as Mr. Nice Guy. And after a week hiatus, I'm very excited to be back with my comrade in gaming commentary, the Mega Man 2 lovin', Mr. Nice Guy huggin', straight thuggin'?
Yeah!
Video game connoisseur, also known as Maction. Mac, how are you, sir? That was completely improvised.
People have called me all sorts of things over the years. Dramatic, ridiculous, extra. But this is the first time thuggin' has ever been used to describe me, and I appreciate it.
Unironically, I might add.
Thank you. See, I knew it. Dude, I'm doing great. It's been a fun weekend. Obviously glad to be reunited, and it feels so good.
It does feel so good. I was about to say it, too. You beat me to it.
We had a great guest host on last week, but always great to have original recipe. And
extra crispy.
Yeah, so just sort of a normal week over here at the Mac household. Lots of, little things that don't really bear mentioning, but I will just say that we did have one real fun thing this most recent Saturday.
Tell me more.
As you know, I do a D&D group for the kids at the local public library. And this last time around, we had two new people who participated, and one of whom had played D&D before, and another who had never, and it was really quite fun. The younger of the two was the one who had never, and she just really took to it like a duck to water, and had a great time, and and we all had a good
That's
time
awesome.
together. So anyway, excited to see them again in the future. But
Nice.
it's
Love it.
It's a fun thing. I enjoy doing on the weekends. Anyway, what about you? Anything interesting happened since last we got together?
Yeah, I think that's dope that you're doing that for kids, I gotta say. That's really cool. Wu-Tang for the children, Mac also for the children. Love
Thank
it. What's going on over here? So, I don't know if you guys watch the news or watch the weather or see what's going on in the world. I live in Wisconsin, and Wisconsin just experienced a historic level of rain and flooding. And so many of my neighbors' basements flooded, and I feel terrible for them. People I work with, people I know, just like lots and lots of water. We were blessed here in the Nice Guy household.
#blessed.
#blessed, maybe lucky, because I don't want to make it sound like others were not blessed. But our basement did not flood, so we didn't have to go through that. But yeah, no power went out. Like I'm out there smoking a brisket like an idiot in 14 inches of rain, and serves me right. I made a rare barbecue error and burned the brisket, which is not something I do often.
It's okay. For 14 inches of rain, we'll give you a pass on that brisket burn.
Yeah, I feel like the rain was throwing off the temp of the smoker. That's my rationale. But anyway, no, Mac, other than that, things are good. Did some laser tag like several times since we last spoke.
Nice.
And it's funny, when you go play laser tag, just like anything, they try to balance the teams.
There is no balancing for Mr. Nice Guy. Folks, I have been there. I have witnessed it before. You cannot stop this man unless it is Mr. Nice Guy on 10 adults. That's the only way.
I'm okay. I'm okay at laser tag. I'm not that guy. I'm not him, as the kids say.
He's also modest.
I try to be. Well, it's funny. We walked in, and I play in a league on some Tuesdays when I'm free, and 3 of the league players were in there. And when I walked up to the desk, I had my son with me, and the guy was like, "Oh, the guys are here today." I was like, "Oh, awesome." He's like, "Oh, you could be on their team," and I was like, "I can," because usually they split us up when it's a public session, and they put us all on the same team.
Wow.
And it's very funny to me because it's like Dream Team, right? I know it's a sports ball reference.
Oh no, I understand the sports ball reference. Yeah,
You know about that, right? So we go in, and one of the other refs is in there who we know, and he's like, how did this happen? Because we're all on the same team. And I'm like, listen, we just walked in, and they put us on the same team. So round one, it was a straight-up bloodbath. Like, it will go down in history of laser tag battles of one-sided victories. Captured 4 domination cubes to the other team's 1, and then he split up the teams. So, but it was fun while it lasted. You know what, Mac? It was fun while it lasted. And on that note, speaking of things that last, we've lasted 352 episodes.
Yeah.
That's got to be like top 1% of podcasts, right?
Yeah, as I recall, I seem that most podcasts don't get past 10. I think it is like only 1% get past 10 or something.
Awesome. Well, on that note, I say we do what we do best and hop right up in that gaming news, man. What do you think about that?
Absolutely, Mr. Nice Guy. What is new in video gaming?
There is so much new in the world of video games. Thank you for tuning into episode 352, y'all. We appreciate y'all. And if you're listening from the Podcast Awards, you don't get chemistry like this anywhere else. I'm just saying. Unrehearsed. We'd be honored and humbled to have your vote for the hobbies that we are nominated in. But first, let's start with GameSpot.com, an article by Brian Marnell. Game accused of copying Horizon gets radically updated Steam page. Mac, you may remember this from a couple weeks ago. We read about a game that was quote-unquote copying Horizon Zero Dawn and how Sony was suing them. Well, here's what has happened. Blair writes, earlier this summer, a battle between gaming giants began when Sony filed a lawsuit against Tencent, alleging that the latter's upcoming game, Light of Motiram, is infringing on Sony's Horizon franchise. Now Tencent appears to have revamped its presentation of Light of Motiram and downplayed the similarities to Sony's game. Tencent has changed several elements of Light of Motiram's Steam page, including a new description for the game that drops all references to the mech animals, creatures in the story, which looked and sounded a lot like the ones from Horizon. The new description doesn't have many specific details at all, and instead tells players, only by overcoming the challenges of survival can you carve out a place for yourself in this unforgiving land. Mac also. The screenshots for Light of Motiram have been swapped out on the Steam and replaced with new pics that still retain some common elements with Horizon, but the screenshots that had a color palette and background similar to Horizon have been removed. Mac, I'm not going to read much more of this article, but I want to get your thoughts on this because I have some strong thoughts on this. The idea of making something that arguably is a copy of something else, getting sued, and then changing it, is that sufficient for the lawsuit to be stopped? Number one, and then I want you to hypothesize for number two. Do you think this was intentional or a coincidence?
I'll take the second one first. Definitely intentional, not coincidental. Could have happened sooner because it was a few weeks back that the lawsuit came, and this change has only been in the last week or so. So, I mean, they could have acted quicker, but it's definitely intentional. Is it going to be enough? I don't know. That's for them to decide in court if it winds up going that far, because there's a lot of similarities, but a lot of the similarities are things that are pretty fundamental or foundational to the game. Now, I do, though, because I don't want to take us too far off track, but I do want to also contrast Pal World, which you might think you see some parallels, right?
Yeah.
Oh, here's a game that's very similar. You could call it a copycat. It does things.
Of Pokemon. Yep.
Of Pokemon, absolutely. But I think one of the things that's quite notable is that in the case of Pal World, and v Pokemon, Nintendo didn't go after Pal World for the similarities. They went after them for patents, for specific game mechanics that they've patented. And so, this just shows a slightly different tack. So while there is certainly another parallel case that's currently ongoing, it's just like, oh, well, Pal World didn't change their things when Nintendo said it was a copy. It's just like, but the way we get to the copying is all important in how people are going to respond to things, because you'll see Pal World switching up some of the mechanics just to be safe.
Right.
And whether that'll be enough, who knows? And I think the same thing in this case. Whether it'll be enough, who knows? But dude, you said you had some strong feelings, so I want to hear some more of your thoughts on it.
Yeah, you know what, man? I think that Tencent are maybe geniuses for doing this.
Okay.
Someone sues you and says it's copyright infringement, and it's very arguable. It's a gray area. And what happens when you sue someone like that? When you're Sony and you sue someone, I feel like you put more eyeballs on their game. That is what you do.
The Streisand effect?
I don't know what that is, but I'll agree with you and assume that makes sense in this moment. What's the Streisand effect?
You haven't. So the idea so the Streisand effect is basically by calling attention to it with a lawsuit, you wind up making it even a bigger deal. One of the big notable ones is with Barbra Streisand. It was one of those. I think it was in the early 2000s. She tried to get a photo of her house removed from somewhere on the internet. And so then everybody wanted to see the photo that she was trying to hide.
Oh, sure.
And then it just, nobody really would have cared if she hadn't tried to pull it away, pull it down type thing.
I think that is the perfect analogy for what's happening here, right? I don't know that no one would have cared about this game, but I don't think it would have gotten the attention that it's getting, especially with it having a Q4 2027 release. It really doesn't make sense for Tencent to have announced this at this point, unless they were doing this intentionally, which I believe they were.
Interesting.
So I think that they probably knew Sony was going to sue, and I think that they probably knew what it would take to get the lawsuit, maybe not even withdrawn, but make it very, very hard for Sony to win. Mm-hmm. And now they've done it, and now this game is going to get attention. And when it does come out, people will say, yeah, this is the game that Sony sued them about. Horizon Zero Dawn similarities, and it maybe will sell better than it would have otherwise. Those are my strong opinions on the game.
An interesting marketing tactic, to be sure.
And we'll see what happens with that case as we follow it in the coming weeks. Next news stories from GameInformer.com. And Mac, this one got me super excited. Battlefield 6 beta reaches series concurrent peak, overtakes Call of Duty all-time peak by Wesley LeBlanc on GameInformer.com. After the bug-riddled launch of Battlefield 2042 back in 2021, EA has been working to revitalize the Battlefield series name, placing Respawn's Vince Zampella as its head amidst the creation of a wider Battlefield universe. If a recent Battlefield 6 beta over the weekend is any indication, those efforts are paying off. Not only did the beta surpass Call of Duty's all-time player count, but it also reached a new concurrent peak for the Battlefield series. Mac, that's really all we need to read here.
Okay.
Along with some of my commentary, I'm going to get your perspective on the direction that gaming has gone over the years. I played Battlefield Bad Company 2 back in the day on my Xbox 360, and it was an amazing game. I have so many memories of playing that game, squatting up with people, having different roles, different classes, destructible environments. It's a different beast than Call of Duty, and since then they've kind of fallen off a little bit. They mentioned Battlefield 2042 was a buggy launch. They've had some other challenges with the franchise, but I can tell you as I played the beta this weekend that it was like it was 2010, 2011 when I first played Battlefield Bad Company 2. I was back, newlywed, with my rare free time when I wasn't hanging with my wife, playing some Battlefield Bad Company 2 and other stuff, and it felt really, really good. It was nostalgic. My wife sat next to me this weekend while I played. We had a really good time. It was great. She was doing her own thing, reading a book on her tablet, whatever. Point being, do we really need new ideas for games, Mac? Or can we simply revitalize the things of old with a fresh coat of paint, but a reversion to the old mechanics and to the nostalgic feel as a way of keeping these franchises going? Do we need to reinvent the wheel every 3 or 5 years with these ongoing franchises?
So I think with respect to an ongoing franchise, maybe so, maybe no. I think obviously sports games, much like NBA 2K, whatever, hasn't fundamentally changed that much in its various releases.
Sure.
And yet it is still a very popular franchise. Now, I know I haven't played that many Fields of Battle, but as a citizen of the internets, I had heard that it was doing quite well this weekend.
Sure.
And that's a huge number of concurrent players. Did you say that it beat out previous records in the franchise?
Yeah, for Battlefield, and its highest concurrent. I pulled the story down. But let's see, what did it say here? It said... Basically, it put up some really big numbers, is what we'll say.
Some real big numbers. That's awesome.
It surpassed Call of Duty's all-time player count, and also reached a new concurrent peak for Battlefield series on Steam.
That is very, very cool. I don't know if I have a grasp as to what that necessarily means. I did see that some people were curious about whether or not that could be maintained, those kinds of numbers. And not just like maintained in the sense
of course.
Can we always beat it, but like how long will this stay at these kinds of numbers? And I'd be interested to see, because I haven't heard much about its performance. But yeah. Anyway, nice guy. I don't think we necessarily need to reinvent the wheel, especially when we have mechanics that work, graphics that work. I would love to see more games in certain series with things that are already working, but with new stories, and in a lot of cases better stories, in order to gain some deeper immersion into the game. I feel like I don't know how immersive the stories are or how much good plot there is in a Battlefield.
It was just multiplayer this weekend.
Oh,
gotcha.
So,
and maybe you're right. That's a really good point, because maybe I should make it clear when I'm talking about this, I'm talking about multiplayer, right? Obviously, we need new single-player stories to come out, but I just find it super interesting that we have Call of Duty, and then they say, you know what, we got to do something new. Let's make a Call of Duty in the future. You're flying, you're running on the wall, you got lasers. And then they reach the point now with Call of Duty where it's like you can buy a skin where now you play as a Ninja Turtle or you play as Beavis and Butthead. There's just crazy guns that make you turn into gumballs when they kill you and just all kinds of stuff. And then eventually they say, you know what? We're going to go back to classic Call of Duty. And everyone gets excited. And it's the same thing with Battlefield. So I think that my point is not that maybe we need to always be nostalgic, but more that we don't need to innovate quite as much as we think we do when it comes to delivering a successful formula in the multiplayer space. That's all I'm saying.
So sometimes we don't need to justify our jobs by reworking the user interface every 3 months to the Discord, to the website, to the telephone. I think that, if things aren't broke, maybe you don't need to try and fix it just to put a new spin on things.
They spent so much time figuring out if they could that they didn't consider whether or not they should, right?
Indeed.
I was eating somewhere this weekend and Jurassic Park was on the TV, so it's top of mind right now, that quote. So anyway, that's all I'm saying, and I will say this as a caveat. It's different when we're talking about an annual release versus a game that comes out every 3 to 5 years. That's totally different, and I get it. But I just think we've gone too far with some of the shenanigans in multiplayer games. That's it.
Yeah.
Well, Mac, I think we may have time for one more quick news story if you're up for it.
Always up for it. What is it?
Well, this one, it's a little bit less interesting, but it has some implications. So this is on IGN.com, written by Tom Phillips, and it's about the ROG Ally X. A release date for the ROG Xbox Ally, essentially the first portable third-party Xbox, has popped up online, suggesting only 2 months to go until the Steam Deck-like handheld will be available to play. According to Deal Labs' ever-reliable Bill Bilkin, that's someone's name, I believe, the ROG Xbox Ally and Xbox Ally X will both launch on October 16th, allowing you an easy method of playing your Xbox game library on the go. Pre-orders will open on August 20th. Deal Labs previously reported, with the Xbox Ally set to cost this amount and that amount. U.S. prices are yet to be confirmed. Mac, this raises the question of if Silksong will come out that day. But more importantly than that, I want to ask you a question as a Steam Deck owner. Do you feel like this is the time for the industry to be releasing yet another PC handheld? And this time, it's not a third-party company. It's not someone overseas. It's someone, or maybe they are overseas, but it's someone who's branding it with Xbox in hopes of more Gamepass sales. Like, as a Steam Deck owner, do you yearn for a new gaming PC? Are you content with what you've got? And then I have a follow-up on that. What do you think?
Well, I'm very content with what I have, although I know that I am very in the PC architecture, the PC system. And I know that a situation, a thing like this is going to be very appealing to people who are very in on the Xbox consoles. So I think it's a great thing for them to have, and I hope that it does well and gives a lot more people a chance to play on the go. Like, we spend so much of our lives traveling to and from places.
Sure.
And I'd love for people to just... The best games in the world are the games that you can actually play, and I'd love for more people to experience more of the amazing art that's being produced. Even if it's something like a Battlefield that is not usually my jam, I want people to have fun with that. So, heck yeah, I'm all about it, even though I'm not, chomping at the bit for it for myself.
Yeah. It's interesting to me as a Steam Deck user, and I have to also mention, I have a lot of gaming stuff in my house. The Steam Deck just doesn't get the play that it did for the first year I owned it. And I don't know that that I need a shiny new toy. It's that I just don't. It's not the first place that I would choose to play games unless I'm in bed. And I guess maybe that's the point, right? Is that it's meant to be portable. But I just don't know if there's too many people who are in this space, Steam Deck, other PC gaming handhelds that are out there that are yearning for something new. Because candidly, I can quote unquote jerry rig my Steam Deck to play Xbox Gamepass, both natively and by stream. So
watch out, we got Hacker Man over here.
Hacker Man, yeah, following these tutorials on the internet. My second question for you, Mac, is around that is how much time do you use your Steam Deck? Do you still use it at the same volume, just as an estimate, as you did, 6 months ago, a year ago? I forget when you picked it up.
Yeah, well, I got it in the first round of Steam Decks, but I will say probably not, mostly because, as you know, I skew more toward the older games. And I have a lot of access at my, at home to my older games.
Yep.
But whenever I was playing newer stuff like Baldur's Gate 3 or anything that needed a little bit more of graphical oomph, then the Steam Deck was the perfect choice for that. I would say I haven't put quite as much time into the Steam Deck lately because, for example, each week I'm playing a round of Stardew Valley with a friend of mine, and that's very easily accommodated on the PC rather than the thing. And as a matter of fact, I prefer mouse and keyboard for that game specifically anyway. But yeah, so I think it has taken its position as more of my modern games are getting played on the Steam Deck and my older games are getting played on the PC, and that's just kind of leaning me a bit naturally more toward the older stuff.
Fair enough. I've been all on the PS5, and the last thing I'll say, because we've got to move on, is the timing of this is interesting. Fall game releases, Google it if you don't know how many games are coming out. Releasing this at that time in that window, an interesting move, but we'll see how it goes. That's been our news for the week.
All right, well, now that we've seen what's going on around us, let's take a little look into the past with some gaming history. Mr. Nice Guy, I've got a couple of big uns that happened this last week in years before. One that is probably only important to me in 2017, released for the modern systems, the Mega Man Legacy Collection 2. On the heels of the Collection 1, which was Mega Man's 1 through 6, this one was Mega Man's 7 through 10 in one package, and put out, by a company contracted from Capcom rather than the Digital Eclipse thing, which they more did it on their own, got Capcom's approval and released it from there. Whereas the second one, Capcom brought people on to make the Legacy Collection 2. It's not as good as the Legacy Collection 1, but, just more buggy and things like that. But then... Oh, sorry.
I like Mega Man, though, too. I like Mega Man as well.
Yeah.
It's a big deal to me.
It's good stuff. Great. Did you ever play 7 and 8 when they tried to make that kind of 16-bit versions?
Yeah, it was one of those things where when you have a favorite TV show or a game, you think, oh, it's over, right? No more Star Wars movies, right? They made them, and then they make more, and they make more. And it's always hard to catch that lightning in a bottle, so that's how I felt about 7 and 8.
Yeah, I felt similarly about 7 and 8 as well. I appreciated their return to form with 9 and 10, though, just because that was my style.
Sure.
A couple of others, one in 1995 for the Super Nintendo, Chrono Trigger. Mr. Nice Guy, have you played Chrono Trigger before?
Barely, believe it or not. My best memory is arguing with my friend in 5th grade. You know, you argue about stuff without really being educated on it. And I remember saying Donkey Kong Country 2 is the best Super Nintendo game. And he said, nope, it's Chrono Trigger. Nope, it's Chrono Trigger. And me having not played it told him he was wrong. He may have been right.
I mean, it's tough to say. It's apples and oranges in a lot of respects. But I will say Chrono Trigger had so many fantastic things about it, like, you know, characters having attacks that synergize, multiple endings, new game plus. Like, for example, Chrono Trigger was not the first game to have like a new game plus where you started the game over and you kept things like stats or items or stuff like that, but it was the first game to actually use the term new game plus. And which is now sort of the standard way of referring to all of that. Hence my referring to it like that. But multiple endings, tons of things, so many cool things about Chrono Trigger. An excellent game. I think everybody should make some time to play it. It is one of those games that is a JRPG, so it is going to take you 20 plus hours to get your way through it, even if you don't try and gather everything. But real great. And then just one last one to put out there, also from 95, but this was something that we never saw in the United States until so many years later, thanks to ROM dumps. And that would be the Broadcast Satellaview games, and specifically the Legend of Zelda one. A digital distribution game that they beamed on the Broadcast Satellaview. That was a satellite.
Yeah.
They were timed events where you had access to it for an hour. It downloaded to your, it was more or less a sort of SNES add-on, the Broadcast Satellaview, but it would download to your Broadcast Satellaview, and then you'd be able to play it until the next week when they beamed in another game. It gave a remix to the original Legend of Zelda that had voice acting, things that happened, like, you know, suddenly everything turns to bombs because you have one of those sages trying to help you out, and he hits the wrong button or whatever. Just a whole bunch of fun kookiness that we would only get many, many years down the line because of video game preservationists who saved that, because there were just not that many Satellaviews in the wild. And
did they save those games?
Yes. So what it involved, right, is like at the end of the Broadcast Satellaview's lifespan, Nintendo viewed it as a failure, and they essentially bought back and destroyed most of the Broadcast Satellaviews. And because the broadcast came each month, and often these came in pieces, so like the BS Legend of Zelda, Broadcast Satellaview Legend of Zelda, wound up being in 4 parts, or I believe it was 4 parts. Those existed somewhere, downloaded on some Broadcast Satellaview consoles that didn't get bought back and destroyed by Nintendo. And so game preservationists managed to track down those old consoles that still had that one section of data on it and reunited it with its other sections, and were able to give us those complete packages many years after the fact. But yeah, as far as we're aware, that data exists nowhere else on Earth except in those ROM sites where they were preserved.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's good for them. Well, anyway, that's just what I had for history this week, Mr. Nice Guy.
Awesome. Love it, love it, love it. Well, Mac, one of the things that we talk about a lot, and by the way, it's time for our topic of the week,
Woo-woo.
a segment where we talk about something relevant in gaming and discuss our opinions on it. One of the things that we've talked about a lot, welcome to the stream, Antonio, good to see you, buddy, is the idea of Game Pass. We don't really ever know the details on profitability, the details on commissions, the details on residuals or whatever it may be, if it's based on a flat fee or if it's based on how many people download your game while it's there. And so this next article is interesting because we're getting the perspective of one of the bigger companies in gaming and why they don't particularly care for or put many of their games on PS Plus or Game Pass. This is by Blair Marnell on GameSpot.com. From the Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Redemption franchises to the 2K Sports titles, Take-Two Interactive has some of the most desirable games in the industry. However, the company has largely kept its marquee titles away from Xbox Game Pass or PlayStation Plus. Now, Take-Two president Karl Slatoff has explained why the company hasn't embraced lending more of its games to subscription services. Quote, "We do put our titles occasionally into some of the subscription services," Slatoff said earlier this month during a Take-Two investor call. "They're great partners for us, and in many cases, they're great. We wouldn't do it unless it was a good economic deal. The platforms wouldn't do it either, so we do take advantage of that, and it's been compelling from an economic standpoint. As it relates to the NBA, we have done it in the past. We don't really talk about whether we're going to do anything in the future, but when you do put something into a channel like that, it generates, obviously, engagement. It generates income for us, and it's something we consider, and if we do it, if the time is right, if the math makes sense." Mac, this is interesting to me because there are so many developers who take the opposite approach. And it's not just small games. It's games, and I won't say that they're a big developer, Team Cherry, but they are putting out a game that many of us are excited for in Hollow Knight Silksong. And they're putting it on Game Pass day one. Microsoft has purchased some companies, right, and then put the games on day one. But for independently owned companies to put stuff on day one is super interesting to me. We're getting the opposite perspective here and talking about why it may not make sense. Like, I don't even know what question to ask you here. I just find this so intriguing.
Sure.
That there's someone who's saying, hey, I could put this on here and profit that way, but I'd rather sell individual copies. Like, what are your thoughts on that model? Well,
I mean, gosh, where to even start? I don't know. There's so many things that we don't know. For a profitability standpoint, Game Pass to us outsiders is just a black box that, people put games in and theoretically they get money out. How much, whether that is more, and I mean, I don't know. It sounds like the Take-Two Interactive president was saying that that doesn't always make sense for them. I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but he almost sounded kind of lukewarm on the thing.
Exactly.
Because he said, the first thing out of his mouth wasn't, sure, it makes us lots of, he didn't say something like, sure, it makes us a lot of money, but, Microsoft's a pain to deal with. It was, sure, it gives engagement. And then, money was, the third thing or the second, it was an afterthought, is what it sounded like, but maybe I'm reading too much into it.
No, I think you're right. And I don't know that money's an afterthought. I think money is at the forefront. But one thing, and maybe I should have just told you this as a caveat, is that it seems to me that they put NBA 2K on PS Plus every single year, but they do it at the end of the year, at the end of the gaming life cycle. So, for example, NBA season starts in late October, early November, ends in June. They'll put the game on PS Plus in June or in May, right? Like, NBA season's ramping up. If you haven't bought it already, here, have it. And then potentially it'll make you buy it in 3 months when we put out next year's version because we're going to shut down the servers of this one.
Yeah.
And you're still going to want to play.
Okay. So should we then infer from that after sales have quieted down, that they feel like whatever we're going to get from putting it on Game Pass is more than whatever small trailing sales we would get after the fact? I guess we could try and reverse engineer what they think the value of Game Pass is to them if we analyzed the lifespan of the game, what kinds of sales they were doing in those last 3 months before they started listing on PS Plus or whatever, and then as a proportion of sales, and then maybe we could try and reverse engineer when it made sense for them to say, okay, we no longer care about getting money from every individual sale. It's more worthwhile to get whatever the cut is from listing it on Game Pass. That could wind up being a thing, because I think they are probably a profit maximizing firm, right? So they're going to be like, oh, hey, we will do whatever makes most sense to the money at the time, and that's where one of those good old supply-demand crisscross hits, maybe.
Yeah, this will be my last thought, just because I think we're running a little over on time.
Oh, sorry, I should have talked so much, dude.
No, it's because I went long on the gaming news, and we were joking around talking about floods and stuff. Not joking around, but we were joking around in the beginning talking about my boring life. I feel like he's trying to play both sides with these quotes. He's trying to be like, we don't really need them, but if they're going to give us some engagement and a few dollars, we'll put stuff on there. When in reality, I think that it's actually a big part of their game plan to release the game, let it sell as much as possible, and then quote-unquote engagement farm at the end of the year. And this serves two purposes, Mac. You get new people in there who didn't buy the game, and now they're getting it for free. Maybe they buy next year's version day one, but also it could potentially re-energize the community. Oftentimes when a game is given away for quote-unquote free, it means that the servers get a boost in activity. And your hardcore people get to go and they get to beat up on the Christmas noobs, as they say, right? The new people that just got the game. So in that sense, it makes your player base that paid for it happy, and it gives other people a chance to play. I would love to see the financials behind Game Pass and what it looks like on a per unit download, or if it's a flat fee, so that we could get a better vision of why some companies choose to give up the sales day one, like Silksong.
Yeah.
Those are my thoughts, Mac. Anything else you want to say?
No, I couldn't have said it better myself. I would love, if anybody can get their hands on that data, let us know. We desperately want to hear it.
And that has been our topic of the week.
All right, well, now we turn to a crowdfunding project that's trying to get off the ground. We call this Kick or Kickstart, and Mr. Nice Guy, I am sad to report to you and to all of our listeners out there that I don't have quite the same style of Kickstarter. Normally, I would put a link in the chat and invite you all to go have a look, and we'd sort of back and forth about the virtues and the vices of it. This is a little bit different because I want to have a return, as you will. See, it went a bit like this, Nice Guy. I was getting ready for the show. Over the weekend, I was doing my research, getting things together, and I wasn't really enthused about the things that I was seeing on Kickstarter that were available this last week. And so I turned to Indiegogo to have a peek. For whatever you might say about Kickstarter, funding things on Indiegogo usually tends to be a little less sure than Kickstarter. But I found an old friend, nemesis, of ours that showed up on Indiegogo pushing the same thing. Mr. Nice Guy, back in episode 316, so, like half a year ago or more.
Okay.
Do you remember us talking about a thing called The Power of Gaming, gamified book of video game benefits?
Vaguely I do. Vaguely.
So what it was that it was a Kickstarter for a book about the benefits of video gaming. But it wasn't just about the book, because they're like, oh, okay, we'll give you, you'll get a book, and if you back it, you'll get a copy of this book. And it's about how excellent video games are. But also, the book itself is going to teach you how to be a video game developer. And then phase 2 of our Kickstarter is we're going to make an MMORPG, and if you kickstarted and got the book, you're going to get a chance to be one of the devs for the video game. And it was so weird because it looked stupid. It had this big thing. This book was not written by AI. And almost everything about the Kickstarter, at least, looked like it was written by AI, which was a lot worse back in those days. Buyers of the book were, like I said, supposed to get a discount on the game and an invitation to become a developer of it. And back when we originally talked about it in episode 316, I mentioned that at the time, it had 4 backers, one backing at each the $33, $55, $59, and $69 levels, and the Kickstarter had $4,000 in funding, which was exceeded its goal. And it was an obvious scam then, and it's an even more obvious scam now, because while it is still on Indiegogo, Mr. Nice Guy, still selling, and some people are still buying, who knows how much those numbers are juiced. The website now to look at for the gamified book, just 404 errors you. But yet you can still click on Indiegogo to back it. And so I don't really have a crowdfunding project that we're trying to get off the ground, because if anything, this is the rare circumstance where at least Mac actively wishes failure on a project. But this is a reason why you always need to be really careful with crowdfunding projects, and why we try to be careful about them when we talk about them here on a show, because it is remarkably easy to make something look good for at least a couple of minutes in order to try and separate some people from their money. So, yeah.
It's interesting. You know, it's super interesting, because one of the things we've talked about, and let me just use a quick analogy. There's this guy who I watch on TikTok sometimes. His name is Mr. Chime Time, and he does food reviews. He goes to different cities, tries what are supposed to be some of the hot restaurants there, and then tells the honest truth about what he thinks about the food. And sometimes he spits the food out. It's theatrics and da-da-da-da-da. People get mad. They're like, man, this is my hometown. How are you hating on the food? Listen, he's built a brand around telling the truth, or what he believes to be the truth. And Mac and I have done the same thing with video games. If we see a video game or a crowdfunded project that we think is not good, we're not going to tell you that it's good just because we want to be nice. We're going to tell you the truth about if we think the project should succeed, and if we think that it's worth your hard-earned dollars for you to go kickstart this project. And so when we see people pulling these types of shenanigans, and I didn't even know about this until Mac just talked about it, we're going to be honest and we're going to call it out. And it's not that we wish ill will on people. Like, please don't ever be that person who writes to a dev or writes to a creator and says negative, hateful things. But we are going to tell you, like, hey, this is what's going on, and please don't give these people your money.
Mm-hmm. And so, if you're at least even passively interested, please don't give the Power of Gaming dude your money. It's a 404 error site now. There's nothing there. People are not getting their things. Scams. Anyway.
And I will say, if you question, not that anyone really who's listening now questions our ability to see what we believe is going to be good or bad, but there's been plenty of Kickstarters where we said, hey, kickstart this, and then the game came out, and we reached out to the people for keys, and we did it as Indie Game of the Week. Because we said, this is going to be a good game, and it ended up being a good game. Oh, what's the mushroom game that was like my game of the year a few years ago? Lone Fungus.
Lone Fungus, that's it.
Lone Fungus, great example. Great game, and I believe he's making his second one now. In fact, I'm going to go play that game again.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a lot of times it comes full circle where we see success. Sometimes it comes full circle like today where we see stuff that we thought was bad and it ends up being bad.
Well, Mr. Nice Guy, I have just one question for you.
What is that?
Antonio wants to know, are you playing 2K26?
Very relevant to what we're talking about right now. I didn't see that in the chat. You know what's interesting, Antonio? It's been many years since I've purchased a 2K game. I'm really tempted, man. Like, it'd be fun to get back in, so we'll see.
Well, that's been our crowdfunding for the day. Remember, listen to Lom, especially. Mr. Nice Guy knows what's up when it comes to crowdfunding games.
Well, now it is time for our... I almost said the wrong thing. It's time for a segment we like to call Nerd Flex.
Woohoo!
A segment where you, the viewers, try to stump the hosts. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. If you're here live, you have a job to do. Put a multiple choice gaming-related question in the chat. Mac and I will use nothing but our noggins to try to answer it. And Mac, I'm pulling up the test bank. If I can spell test bank correctly. and we can do some randomly generated questions. But I believe you also have another method for us to do questions today, right?
Indeed. Not that long ago, I picked up a whole series of ultimate video game trivia questions. We can also pull from that resource as well.
Yeah, why don't we start there? Why don't you pull a random card and let's give it a shot? It'll be fun.
Sounds like a plan. First question for the night. What is the name of the baby owl in Ori and Will of the Wisps? Now, this does suffer from the issue that it doesn't give us multiple choice. It just has a question and an answer. And Mr. Nice Guy, Ori and the Will of the Wisps is a hole in my game library that I have not yet filled, so I've never played it. I'm afraid I don't know.
I've played Ori and the Will of the Wisps, but Mac, I know nothing of the name of the owl. It is not a game that I got super far into. Shout out to friend of the show who bought that game for me recently or last Christmas, but I cannot remember the name of that owl.
Gotcha.
What would be a good name for a baby owl?
Hoot?
Hoot? That'd be a good name. Why don't we go with... I'm going to go with Bronson. I don't know where that came from.
Bronson.
Let's go with Bronson.
Love it. All right, and the answer is Ku. Ku.
Dang. So close.
Yeah, so close but so far away. Let's go for another one, though. See where we're at. Here we go.
These are interesting because they're not multiple choice, but this is fun. I'm learning some stuff.
All right, this one, I am afraid I know the answer already.
You're afraid of that?
Well, yeah, I was... who is the creator of the Civilization series of video games?
See, and that's not one that I know, so I feel like that's a great question to ask, because then the viewers or the listeners will learn something.
Well...
Even if you know already.
Well, dear listener, the great news is that in almost all of these games, the dude put his name right in the title. So it's Sid Meier's Civilization, Sid Meier's Pirates, Sid Meier's, he did all the things.
I did know that.
Yeah, so, see, Mr. Nice Guy, you knew that. All right. Well, we've got one more, because folk in the chat are being shy. All right. All right, Mr. Nice Guy. What is the name of the time-manipulating weapon used by the Prince of Persia in the video game Sands of Time?
Oh, this is the one that I've played. PlayStation 2, I believe.
Yeah.
But it is, dude, it's PlayStation 2. I'm
not
going to remember. I know you have to fill it with sand in order for it to work. And you could run on the wall, and you could go back, and you could, if you fell, and I don't remember the name of the thing. What is it, though? I bet you know.
Do you remember what kind of weapon it was?
It was like almost like a, not an orb, but like it was a stick with like a torch type of vibe that the top filled up with sand.
Yeah, so it was the Dagger of Time.
That's right. I've seen the movie, too. How could I not know this?
It's okay, man. It's okay. It's actually... I have a copy of that movie. Like, I've got a DVD copy of that movie that they made based on the
Me
game.
too. My wife and I watched it on our honeymoon.
Oh, gosh. I watched it like 3 or 4 times in theaters. I brought everybody to the theater to see it because I was just like, oh my gosh, it's a good, it's a good video game movie. So yeah.
Well, we got a couple questions right.
We did.
Even though they weren't multiple choice, we'll take that.
Yeah.
That has been Nerdflex.
All right. Well, now we turn to a little bit of legalese.
Legalese.
Mr. Nice Guy, for about the 5,000th time, let's talk about Fortnite and how Epic won in court against Google. But
okay,
strangely not Apple. So, guys, there are so many previous episodes of the show where we've talked about the cases because we were on the beat as this whole thing was developing. But in short, the way too short version that leaves out so much interesting detail is that Epic Games did not like giving Apple or Google their 30% cut of purchases of V-Bucks for the in-app purchases that they agreed to pay in exchange for inclusion on the Apple and Google storefronts. Although their contracts with both of these companies expressly agreed that they would never try to circumvent that 30% cut, Epic included in its code a way to do that. And once they had made all their planning and they got all their stuff ready, they made public their Liberation Day video, their free Fortnite video, and turned on their circumvention measures to get out of paying the 30% cut to Apple and Google. And then the second that Apple and Google found that out, they booted Fortnite from their storefronts because they broke their contracts with Apple and Google.
You know what's so funny about this? I feel like there's a very obvious legal loophole. When they said that they wouldn't do anything to circumvent that 30%, maybe they were telling the truth. They wouldn't in the future, but they already had in the past.
Hey!
And that was their argument in court, potentially. I don't know. But maybe they're innocent.
Well,
who knows?
They definitely were not innocent, and they definitely wasn't their argument in court. Epic had already had their PR firm well in force, appealing to all of us about how, it was about all you gamers. That's why they did it. That's why they broke their contract. It was for you, Mr. Nice Guy. They shed their blood for you. So, in the lawsuits against Apple and Google, challenging their removal from the app stores, Epic asked for a bench trial in front of a judge and argued that they should not be held to that contract because Apple is an unlawful monopoly and they can't be expected to be bound to the terms of that contract. The judge said no to Epic in almost every way imaginable, but she did cut them just a little bit of slack and said that Epic can be allowed to let their players know that they can buy their V-Bucks elsewhere than through the in-app purchasing window. And that's the win that Epic got against Apple. Now, Epic asked for a jury trial in the Google case and did convince a jury that Google was acting as an illegal monopoly and that they would be forced to put Fortnite back on the platform and keep dealing with them. And so even though it sounds a little unintuitive, right? It seems really weird. Mr. Nice Guy, if I told you that Apple on their Apple devices, on their Apple phones, was not a monopoly, but Google on the Android phones was acting like a monopoly, I think most of us, does that pass the sniff test for you?
Not really.
Yeah. Just because they're notable for just being the only game.
It's the same thing, right? It's one of those things where sometimes you look at a company you don't like and you're able to see their fault, but you look at another one and you're like, no, but I like that one. And you're willing to let the stuff go that they're doing.
Yeah.
I feel like that's what could have been happening.
It could have been, but it's a little, though it sounds unintuitive, it does make some kind of sense just because really we talk about monopolies, right? And we talk about it being a bad thing. But in the United States, almost all of our anti-monopoly laws don't center around whether or not there is a single monolithic company, or how badly we're getting fleeced by having a single seller, or even how bad the products become. All, tantamount, all the big things about being a monopoly. But in the United States, it's really just about one thing. It's about antitrust. It's just about, is one firm keeping other firms from competing with them? So Google, they found, what in fact was making agreements with individual app developers to keep them only on Google's platform, on the Google Play Store, and not going to other platforms. They called their thing Project Hug, but they were giving, extra money and incentives to make it so that you just dealt exclusively with us. And that was, the jury found, an anti-competitive behavior and becomes the turning point against Google in court. But why is this relevant now, Mac? This started back in 2020.
Tell us why.
I can't even remember that far back. Mr. Nice Guy, this thing was kind of in limbo Because often when you're found by a jury or even by a court to have lost a case, often they'll put it on hold for a little bit while you try and appeal the case. Because it would be a lot more difficult to change the status quo and then to try and change it back if the decision is reversed on appeal. And so they did find this a while back, but just barely the appeals court unanimously affirmed what the lower court, specifically the jury had found, that Google was acting monopolistically and that they would have to be forced to deal with Epic and put them back on. Now, Google says they're going to appeal to the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court doesn't have to hear anything. So we'll probably see it sooner rather than later, Fortnite there. And yeah, but who knows? I'm not a lawyer. That's just legalese.
That's legalese, boy. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Well, thank you for tuning in to episode 352, everybody. Before we go, we have one last segment called What We've Been Watching and What We've Been Playing, where we talk about the cool, nerdy stuff that we have been into. And if you're watching and playing cool stuff,
yeah.
Mac, why don't you tell us what you've been watching and playing?
Absolutely. I haven't been watching too much, just a little bit of Dropout. What I've been playing, though, Stardew Valley with a friend on the weekends, some RPGs, some Dungeons & Dragons on the weekends for the kids, some GURPS during the weekdays with some friends, and also, of course, the thing that I've been finding a lot of comfort in is that tower defense game Creeper World 4 that I really quite enjoy, and that's kind of all I've been up to. What about you, Mr. Nice Guy?
Well, this past weekend, Mac, it was all about that Battlefield 6 beta. It brought back so many memories, and I had so much fun. I will say this. It's very much more a skill-based game, in my opinion, than Call of Duty, and the ability and desire that you, or the willingness you need to have to work with a team made it so much more fun. Obviously, been doing tactical laser tag. That has been super fun. And reading this new to me book that I picked up called Snow Crash. I'm a huge fan of Ready Player One, not so much Ready Player Two. So I looked to find some books that were similar and found Snow Crash as one by Neil Stephenson, written back in the 90s. And I'm a couple chapters in, and I'm really, really enjoying it. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Well, Mac, why don't you take us home, my friend?
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody, for coming out and being a part of the show. We hope that you'll join us next week, Mondays at twitch.tv/2nerdsinapod, on Twitch for the live recording. We try and do this every Monday, usually at 7 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Central. We go for an hour, and we hope you'll join us again. And to anybody who is here and is voting in those final votes in the podcast awards, we hope that you will see it in your heart to vote for us in those categories. Please, 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 please. Thank you to everybody who's listening, and until we see you next time, remember to be excellent to each other and keep it nerdy. Bye.
Deuces. See ya.